Andrew Moore. I'm the head of Google Cloud AI. I've spent my career in artificial intelligence, jumping between academia and industry. This particular next is so exciting for me because it's all about how artificial intelligence has become a real and significant part of the world's economy. And I'm imagining the students I was teaching 20 years ago about the futuristic promise of AI. And although we have a heck of a lot further to go, much of it is now actually here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rajan Sheth, and I lead the product team for Cloud AI. I've been at Google 15 years and in enterprise the whole time because my passion is turning interesting technology like this into products that can help all of you, customers, developers, partners, do really great things. And I think AI is probably the most interesting technology I've seen because it can really empower people to really transform.
So in 2019, I think you're seeing this in this particular meeting. We are taking the business of AI very seriously. The fact is that where many of us were excited about producing tools which had the prospect of helping transform industries, we're now most interested in the science of how enterprises adopt AI effectively, without too many false starts, safely, reliably, and of course, in an ethical and sensible way.
Please take your seats and silence your mobile devices. Our session will begin shortly.
Cool. So let's go ahead and kick this off here. Sorry, we're starting just a little bit late. We had a little video issue. We didn't have the converter box, so we're going to be pulling out the cable right at midstream, but no worries. So anyway, welcome to our presentation. Welcome to Improve Process by Integrating AppMaker, Data Studio, and GCP. And just to kind of get going here, Cleo, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Cleo. I'm a product manager with ATP Financial. I'm also a G Suite Google Developer Expert, and I've been working with AppMaker since the beta days.
Yeah, and my name is Schalk. I'm a developer advocate. I've also been one of the early founders of AppMaker when it was the 20% project, and we actually launched it internally. And then here we are today. We're working towards continuing growing the ecosystem. So happy to be here. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. So for the session today, we're going to I'll start off with an AppMaker overview. So how many folks here have not used AppMaker today or yet? Oh, good. So we got some new folks here. I'm happy to show you definitely the cool stuff. So Cleo's going to be doing a real quick demo on how to build like a simple request application. And then she's going to dive into like what they've done over at ATB, Alberta Treasury Board, right? And then we'll get into some cool stuff with Data Studio. She's got a neat demo where she's actually pulled some real data and integrated it into AppMaker. And then I'll show a final demo at the end, just kind of the art of what's possible with AppMaker and GCP or the Vision API. And then we'll just do Q&A from there on out. Cool. So let's talk about AppMaker. AppMaker is a low-code application development environment. It's not a no-code. It's actually low-code. So typically, when you start to build out applications, if you want to do any kind of level of customization, you do have the ability to drop into the scripting environment that it does provide. The main goal, though, is to empower a larger audience of knowledge worker or business developers, essentially people who have maybe a certain level of comfort on just working with data, but might have some understanding of how to work with some JavaScript, perhaps, maybe a SQL database in the back end, maybe even some CSS. So if you have some of those skills, or even if you have some of the older skills that have been around since the 90s with rapid application development, the application development methods are very similar, such that you can drag and drop widgets onto a canvas and a screen and then bind them to a backend database. So that's essentially what AppMaker is. Why does AppMaker exist? A little backstory with AppMaker. Our CIO at the time funded our 20% project, which was essentially to provide a technology that would serve to fill this gap of custom applications that just needed to be built but were economically not viable, meaning like there was a lot of internal applications that needed to be built that had requirements that were more advanced than what you could do with like a spreadsheet. And this was in Google, and what I've seen, especially with other companies, that other companies have this same need to build customized applications that are internal. They serve definitely a purpose. But what happens a lot of times is like when there's no solution, you either get these very large bloated spreadsheets that can be unwieldy, they don't have a very good user interface, as well as you can often get shadow IT creeping up where you can often have people that have some technical know-how. They'll be able to provide a solution momentarily, but then they're often gone, and then you're kind of left with this shadow IT technical debt. So AppMaker's goal was to solve that process, mitigate shadow IT, and then provide a streamlined process in focusing on like the core areas of app development. One is the data, the modeling environment, so you don't have to write out all the code that serves as your backend database, your schema, so to speak. You can set up relationships, set up validation and such, all within a declarative environment. Secondly, the UI. If you're happy with CSS, HTML, that's great. But for folks who just want to put together a UI and not have to worry about it, that's where AppMaker also excels. You can visually design your UI. You can drag and drop widgets from a palette and then bind those widgets to a back-end data source. It's pretty straightforward. And then finally, when you want to get into customization, such as more intricate workflows or really any kind of front-end UI manipulation, you have that ability just by dropping into JavaScript. And if you want to integrate third-party JavaScript, such as jQuery, D3 or whatever, you can easily do that within AppMaker applications. And then also the customization on the server, meaning like if you have some server-side logic that needs to execute app script functions, app script beans or services, you have that all available too. And so a typical AppMaker app will do a little bit of UI manipulation. It might even integrate third-party JavaScripts or whatever. And then you'll often just launch server-side code to do some interesting things, whether it's AppScript or even calling REST APIs to talk to any number of third-party REST services, or even talking directly to GCP. And so that's what we'll be showing as well today. So what have we seen so far from a set of use cases? So as you may know, AppMaker has been out in either beta or it also was launched last year. We've been working with a lot of partners and customers, understanding their use cases. And what we've found is that a lot of their use cases, at least for the types of apps that they need built, are fairly similar. Like there are a lot of tracking, there's a lot of dashboards, there's a lot of simple workflows, and this is where AppMaker kind of finds its niche. And so this is what we've learned so far, both internally, originally at Google, as well as working with our early adopters and partners and such. All right, so getting into AppMaker, the development process is relatively simple. Conceptually, it's like, first, you can start by defining your data model. Your data model could start off as, say, a spreadsheet. So you have like the structure, the different columns. And then you can then point AppMaker to that and then bring that into AppMaker. And Cleo's going to do a demo in a second. Then you can design your UI. So you can drag and drop whatever widgets you want, plug them into the back end. You can even generate a good amount of your UI using some of the wizards. And then finally, you're ready to, you can customize. There's another optional step of adding some additional code if you like. And then the final step is like, let's go ahead and preview, test it a bit, and then publish it out to your users. And that's at the step where you can define who the users are. They can be like a collection of different roles that you could then you could go in beforehand and define, like this is an admin role, they can see these pages. This is like a basic user that can see these pages, or even these widgets. I want only the admins to be able to see this little link that takes them to the admin page. Things like that. So it's all very granular. You have complete control, both on the UI as well as on the server. So on the database backend, you can control who can access the different elements, who can insert, delete, fetch data. So it's very granular, and you have basically complete control in that regard. So I'd like to turn it over to Cleo, and she's going to actually show AppMaker in how to build a pretty cool feedback gathering app. So go for it.
Thank you, Chris. So switching over to my computer here. Today I'm going to show you how easy it is to create a fully functional web application without writing a single line of code. The example I'm going to show is a request feedback type intake/management type tool, where generally a team would need to gather either work requests or feedback from their user, and their team have to do some processing in it. This is very common in ATB, and Google Forms does work to some extent, but once you get to like high volumes of requests or concurrent users trying to work with the same response sheet, it gets a little harder. So that's why with AppMaker, you can kind of alleviate these problems. This is an example spreadsheet, a typical example of a list of requests that you may have pulled from a Google form. And I'm going to use this sheet in order to create my application. So I'm going to switch over to AppMaker here. And what I've done is use the starter app template, which is available when you create a new AppMaker project. Once you actually click on that starter app, you will see this. For the sake of time, I pre-created it. And basically, it gives you some UI elements that are pretty and nice to look at, and you can start building your apps from here. The first thing I'm going to do is make my data model. So my data model is essentially my way of saying what types of data/information I like to capture or display in the application. And I do that by clicking the Add. If your GCP admin set up your Cloud SQL database, you should just have that choice by default, which is where the data would actually be stored. I'm going to name this model. I'll call it requests. And I'll utilize the sheet I just showed earlier. And as you can see, it reads off those values. And then I hit next, you can see it grabbed all the column headers, which gets translated to data fields in the data model. I'm just going to make sure the field type is correct. And so you can see there's different types of data you can be collecting. This one is a date, so I'm going to make it into a date. Hitting create, and now my fields are in the data model.
Is your data in the data model yet?
Good question. The data is not in the data model yet. You can actually import the data if you want using this function here on the top left. I'm going to also utilize the configuration that AppMaker gives to each data field to kind of further refine the status column. So first of all, I'm going to use the possible value to say that the status of a request can only be new, it can only be in progress, and it can only be completed. So the user has to enter one of these three values. This way, I don't have to worry about them entering something that doesn't make sense. Next, I'm going to use a default value, which basically indicates every request starts as new by default unless I specify it to be something else. So there we go. There's the data model. And now we move on to the screen portion. This is where I'm going to build the pages that my users will be interacting with.
You want to go back to the demo?
In the application.
Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. And so to do that, we use widgets. And here's the widget menu. You can see there's a bunch of elements I can use. The two I'll be using is a form and table. For simplicity, I'm going to build a single page app. So I'm going to put a form for people to submit requests. And on the same page, they're going to see the list of requests that's been submitted.
But you can have multiple pages too if you wanted to. But yeah.
For sure. So first, I'm going to select the data source. It will ask me to do so. It's the request I just created. I'm going to do an insert form. And for this, I'm just going to get whoever's submitting to enter their description and their email of their request. Now backtrack a bit, and there's some things I want to do on the page itself as well. So you can see the starter app has a header, and it shows the display name. So I'm going to change this to request intake. And I'm actually going to say the whole page uses requests as its data source, as this is a page to work with requests.
And so what's a data source?
Data source is essentially a query view of your
That's right.
data model.
Exactly. Yeah.
And let's put now the table in order to view the list of requests. Here we see that now that I declare it on the page level, it will just inherit it. I'm going to hide the ID, but what I want to do is the team processing the request, I want them to be able to change these fields, the status, assigned to, comments, and the completion date. And as you can see, widgets have properties, which is on the right here on the editor. I'm going to utilize that to give some spacing between the two, the form and the table, so it looks a little better. Finally, I'm going to link in the search box. I'm just going to do a very simple search. So I just want to do a keyword search on the description so that people can find requests based on just a keyword on the description. To do that, I need to bind the search text box. I have it selected. I need to use the query object inside a data source. As we talked about, data source is essentially a query view. And so there is a query object which has filters. I can say what field I want to apply the filter to, which is the description. And I want to say if the description contains whatever user entered, return those results. The other thing I'm going to do is to actually run the search, I have to say on the case where user changes value, so it's called an onValue change event, I'm going to have it reload the data source, which will take into account the filter that the user just applied and reload the task list. So let's actually see what I've done so far. The preview allows you to actually see what the end user will see without actually deploying your application. So it's a little faster way to check your progress. As you can see, I have a form and I have the submitter, and I'm going to say
And the preview window also gives you a little page chooser on the top left, a little log window. Those will disappear once you actually deploy it for production.
for here. And now you can see I entered the values on the form, and now it shows up on the table. So it's saving my data, which is great. The last thing I'm going to demo is the usage of the user picker. So you notice I had to type my own email in, which is kind of long and tedious. So I am actually going to utilize the widget known as user picker. And what this will do is actually reads from my organization's directory and be able to pull emails from there. So I'm going to bind its value to the submitter field in my data model. I'm going to label it submitter. And now I don't need this text box anymore because I just made one. And let's preview again, and you can see the difference now. And now, if I type just the first few characters of my name, it looks in the directory, it finds me, and now it puts my email in directly, which is much nicer user experience. And now I can demonstrate the search since now I have 2 tasks, and I'm going to say I'm going to find for all tasks related to login. And let's talk about that. And you can see it reloads with just 1 record. Now, with this as a very simple application, you can take this, go to your testers, try things out, and you can keep iterating through it. And that's the nice thing about AppMaker. It's so easy to deploy and make newer versions. So here's an example that I did where I just took that and iterated a little more, where I actually completely took out submitter. I wrote just a couple lines of code to say, just grab whoever's logged in, grab their email, just put it in the submitter so they don't have to enter it. I've also said if they change status to completed, let's let the submitter know that their request has been completed. So for example, now if you see on the table list, I can change one of these to completed. Let's say I was the team, I processed it, I'm done. I completed it, and you can see with the script, it actually auto-populates the date, and I should be getting an email after that. And here's the email I received. So it's, even if you had to write a few lines of code to automate certain stuff, it's just so simple. And if you don't need write any lines of code, you still have a fully functional app. So let's go back to the presentation, where now I can talk a bit about our success stories within ATB and how AppMaker have been used. So in the same line of kind of a request intake tool, our banking operations team have created a certain registration application. So this team takes requests from lenders who needs to do a variety type of searches, like corporate or registry searches on their customer. And this request can get quite complicated because of the different types of searches you can do. Used to be a macro-enabled Excel sheet. The macros are used to make the sheet Excel sheet a little easier to fill out. And it gets emailed to the team. Unfortunately, depending on the type, it goes to different teams. So they have 5 email queues kind of managing this process. And it's just not very efficient, not very optimized. So a couple of the team members there have some coding experience, not a web application, full-blown server client type application development, but some experience, and they decided to take this on and reimagine how this could work, utilizing some of the better controls on their UI. So here's the demo of the application that they currently rolled out. And the form is now more intuitive based on what user has entered. They produce a little checklist so that the user knows, oh, I got to fill in these items there. They also are able to use the parent-child relationship data modeling that AppMaker provides, so that for one parent request, they can do multiple searches and have users be able to enter that kind of more complex type requests. And so once submitted, the requester has full visibility of that request records. And on the fulfillment team side, they get now a work queue where they can go through and check out a request to themselves and be able to change the status, contact the requester if they have more information, and so forth. So this has been really successful. It eliminated 4 of their email queues. Now it's all centralized into the AppMaker app. It reduces the time of processing from 24 hours down to an hour. And this team here really took an iterative approach to this. They did a lot of pilot testing prior to full production release, which lets them fix all the bugs and also get the enhancement they need from their testers. And because of that, they are able to achieve a very high adoption rate as soon as they went into production. And they're still iterating. And it's now that they have learned how to build an application, these team members have been able to actually respond to all the requests and feedback that their users have given them and be able to deploy them in no time at all. So everyone feels happier because they're getting listened to, and they see it in the app right away because the team can respond quickly to these changes. Next example I'm going to cover is our procurement team's contract database. So in the past, they have a sheet managing the list of the contracts that ATB holds with our suppliers. And there's so many concurrent usage. Sometimes there's like 20 people working on the same sheet, which, as you know, sheet you can only apply filter once. So it really makes it inefficient. People are overriding people's views or actually their actual data. So the data quality is decreased and the usability is just not great. So what they've done is they had a summer student who also has some coding background, and he came in and built this application where now the user can search for the records they want, as well as add new records in a much better intuitive user interface with logical sections, all the possible values listed so that they don't fill it out wrong. And they can trigger assessment based on how user enters certain things and do scoring based on that. This really cleaned up the quality of their data, and now with this, the validation is better, so they get better data, better reporting, and better visibility in general. So now they can see the list of expiring contracts because AppMaker is calculating that for them with the script. And the scorings are better, and the overhead of managing just has improved, and they are able to remove 1 FTE's worth of work. Finally, there is the loan review application, which is used by our retail loan review team. So their process is an example of where the spreadsheet really wasn't designed for what they need. What they do is post-audit review of lender application, and they review for compliance needs, and basically it's a list of questions and checklist items they have to go through. Depending on how certain questions are answered, they have to do more checks and balances. And so it becomes this long, long spreadsheet that each review specialist manage on their own. It's not easy to actually find specific lenders unless you know which specialist did it and which file it was in. So it's inefficient. They moved from Excel to Sheets, and even then, because the process is not really designed for spreadsheet, it just wasn't really efficient. So they asked me, well, can AppMaker help? And for them, they actually never coded at all. There's no coding experience for this team here. So I walk through them, teach them how to create the page they want, how to do the data modeling, and they're able to create basically the interface that they envision how their review would work. So you can see it's a very long page, but now with some coaching, they are able to actually do conditional where they select one field and it hides other fields based on what they say. And also they've learned some CSS, so they even color-coded their own answers based on what user has entered. And so with that, with the automation, with the elimination of the tedious overhead, they save so much time. And the best part of it is they feel empowered. And for people who've been just working as a banker all their lives, to be that heavily involved in a creation of a web application is something they would never actually dreamed of until AppMaker came along. So now that I've covered what awesome apps that AppMaker can make, let's talk about all the integrations that you can do to make your app even better.
So just to kind of finalize what you're saying there, you're saying that basically at ATB, this is a working example with the different apps of true knowledge workers that were able to, essentially with your little bit of guidance and kind of helping them, they were able to build sophisticated solutions after.
Yep, for sure.
Okay, that's cool.
Mm-hmm. So because it's built on G Suite and the AppScript platform, there's a lot of integration you can do with the AppMaker apps you produce. So you can continuously improve an application that you've created. So the free apps I covered, they all use Data Studio for their reporting needs. And so this allows them to have real-time data by tapping into the Cloud SQL database that the data is stored on. And while AppMaker has charting widgets, using Data Studio actually opens up to other people helping with the process as well, because now you have also a group of people who can just focus on learning Data Studio and not having to learn AppMaker in its intricacy. So that actually even opens up to more people helping to build solutions. And the beautiful thing is it's live, it's completely real time. You set it up once, it will always pull the real life data. And that really eliminated any kind of snapshot data or data dump that people have to do to get their reports and generate them off like Sheets or Excel. So with that, I will just do a quick demo of how Data Studio works. And so I have the request app that I just mentioned earlier. If you go back to AppMaker, so that was the published version, and if you go edit deployment, you can see this is what I published. So this is that production published version. And if you actually hit edit, if you use the default Cloud SQL database that your G Suite admin set up, you will see there is a database key. Oh, didn't need to click that, which will tell you which database you need to tap into. Now, once you switch over to Data Studio, first of all, with Data Studio, if you're not familiar with it, you need to specify a data source, which I already did, but basically you will select Cloud SQL for MySQL as your type of connection. You'll probably need to get your G Suite admin to give you the instant connection name as well as some username and password. But I can paste in the database
or
key.
create your own.
Or create your own, yep. I can put in my database key here, and once I authenticate, it will actually read my data model, as you can see, my request. I can also run custom SQL query if I need to do better aggregation. And once it reads it, it will actually port all the fields over. And this is an example of a dashboard I created based on those requests that is in my application here. As you can see, it just utilizes the fields from that data source and create these charts. So as I mentioned, the examples I've given, they all have their own boards. So this is the search and registration app. In the past, with their email queue and how all that works, they have no visibility of the team's workload. It's very hard to track. Now they actually built a huddle board where they can actually see all the requests, how many is pending, and what statuses they're in, the types of requests. And they're currently exploring more features like the blended data in Data Studio to kind of even incorporate other types of data into their dashboard. So it's been really powerful and eye-opening for them to actually be able to see this all live. Loan review, similar thing. So they used to do a monthly reporting. It takes a day for someone to actually go and get the data, do the reports on Excel or Sheets, and then be able to report that to leaderships and so forth. Now it's just a Data Studio report, and this particular view, which actually tracks how many times a question has been answered, it actually uses the custom query function from the data source I just showed to get that aggregated data. Finally, with procurement, as I mentioned earlier, it now has a nice dashboard, more visibility to all the contracts, active and expiring contracts they have in their system. And actually, they have embedded this particular report into their AppMaker app. So it's actually quite simple to do. And I will show you that quickly, how to do that. And Data Studio gives us embed this report function, which you click on. There's a little bit of HTML code. Doesn't matter what it says. You just copy it direct. In my demo here, I have created a page called report just for that purpose. And what I'm going to utilize is the HTML widget that I can drop onto the screen. And for the HTML, I'm just going to paste blindly what I just grabbed from Data Studio and do allow unsafe HTML. Now let me preview it.
It just means so it can execute JavaScript. So.
Yes. And now I will preview that. And as you can see now, it's completely embedded into my AppMaker app. To an end user, they probably wouldn't really notice. And because I built a two-page application, I can flip between the two really easily. So that's how easy it is to just integrate your AppMaker data to Data Studio. And now if I flip back to the presentation, let's talk about a few other types of integration.
Very cool.
Another popular one is the automatic generation of docs and sheets. And the screenshot here is an example of the procurement team's contract database template for a report they have to produce to give to like third party or email to like new team member and so forth. And in the past, when they had the sheet, they actually have to copy every value into the template, which is obviously very tedious. With now the auto generation, they write the app script, and now it just gets automatically sent to whoever they need to send it to, which is, again, another time saver. Other possible integration that we've been playing with, so Maps and Places API. AppMaker has a map widget that shows a location in the map. You can also then use Places API to get more information about that location and display it right on the app as well. Chatbots using like natural language API or Dialogflow or even having Hangout Chat tapped into the AppMaker data. You can actually now create conversational interfaces for your application. And I actually did one for the project tracker that comes with AppMaker. I did a chatbot that you can ask what my outstanding tasks are. And finally, you can really connect through any external services for the REST API. So any third-party system your organization might have, any other GCP functionalities, you can also incorporate that through the app script portion of AppMaker. And with that, I'll turn over to Chris to talk about one of these interesting integration that you can do.
Thank you. That was really cool. Yeah, definitely. Awesome. So I'm going to talk about kind of the art of what's possible. So I've kind of taken the integration story and connected it to Cloud AI, essentially utilizing the Vision API. And so for my use case, I figured this would be kind of fun to try out. I essentially built a mobile web app in AppMaker, and I'm utilizing HTML5 to capture what's shown in the camera. And the idea behind this is that, how many people actually still have business cards these days? It's kind of like tapering down, right? So if you still have a business card and you want to give it to someone, it's almost easier just to take a picture of it. So this does the next step further. This takes a picture of it, calls Vision OCR, essentially converts it to text, and then, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Sends back the response, and then you got a nice little text stream of what the data was on the actual card. And then with some simple app script, you can create a Google Doc from that. So that's essentially what I built in this app. It's there's a little bit of code involved, but I'll show you. It's not too bad. The most complex thing is the HTML5 part of it. So what we're looking at here is the AppMaker environment, and this is the little UI part that I'm working with here. So let me just go ahead and switch this over so that you can see that I can even, there's a few little mobile enhancements that we're starting to add. We're going to continue to add this. But right now, I'm just going to go ahead and show you this application, how it works. So in this case, I'm just going to grab this card that I happen to have here, which is it's a business card that I got created in Japan for me. And so this business card essentially, don't tell me all our display troubles. We had so many display troubles earlier. It's not giving us. It shows the camera is being turned on. Yeah. All right, I'll click refresh. The other thing that I can do is I have it also on my mobile app, which then I'm not connected to the thing. Oh, that's unfortunate. It doesn't seem to like this display. I'll give it one more shot. Yeah, the little light is on, so it says the camera's turned on. All right, well, plan B. I will go to my mobile app. So hopefully you can get the idea in the sense that what happens here is, so after I click the image, I'll get the response back from the API. Then I can actually create a document. So to plan B, sorry, the display is causing us problems. Even that's why we got started late. So for plan B, I have the app right here on my phone. So I'd like to ask a volunteer to give me a business card. I'm going to run up and get it. I have to jump over the fence. Or I think we had someone back there that might be able to volunteer. Yeah, it's pretty crazy, I know. Yeah, there we go. It's OK. I spoke to her before. So anyway, so now I have the app right here. Yay, I can see the video. Yeah, as I expected. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and take a snapshot of this image. Let me get a little bit of glare kicking in. Oh, there we go. So now I got some text. I don't know if that looks OK to you. I'll just go ahead and create the document. And then what I can do is go back to my laptop, and we'll see it. So now this is firing off an email. Sorry. All right. OK. There we go. So I got this email that just came out. And it's got a little link there. So I'll click on the link. And there's the text. Sorry, it's a little bit glare, but hopefully, is that basically the text that you had on your card? I can zoom in a little bit there. Ta-da. Smart cashback shopping. So anyway, let me step into a little bit of how this actually works. Yeah, sorry for the glare. Anyway, that's a bummer, the little thing didn't work for the viewing there. But nevertheless, the way it works is that I have a bit of code that I first, when I click on the button, it calls a function down here, grab image. And what I'm doing is I'm using HTML5 to first connect to the camera, grab that video, set it to a canvas, and then I can convert that image into a base64 image, which makes it easier for transport. Or I could have also stored that in Google Storage if I wanted to. And then I have a little call here that says, call the Vision API. And that's right here. And that's the actual request that goes to my server-side logic. So that's running on the AppScript runtime server. And I'm actually sending upstream that image. And we'll go to the server vision part. So this is the make request part. And what this is doing is it's assembling a request that has all the necessary arguments, all the parameters. So in this case, I'm specifying that I want to do a document text detection. I could easily do sentiment analysis or any of the other flavors of detection. It's pretty cool. And then I add in the image right there in line. Otherwise, it would be a URL that I refer to, like in Google Storage. And I set up the request, and I call URL fetch, which is essentially my REST call out to the service, to the URL of the API, along with the API key, and then the options, and then I get the response back. And so once I get the response back, I can then start to build out the rest of the UI. So the response back comes. I have this function here called show response. And this bit of code here is running on the browser, on the client. And so essentially, I take the data that I want, I update the UI, I update it into essentially the little text box there. I have a little bit of code to check to see if there's a problem with the image. I can just give a little error message, and so forth. So that's basically how it works. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to show you the actual the demo from my laptop, but we had a lot of problems with the video connection here. I could also show like all the raw images in the log. Oh, actually, I could do that at least, give you an idea. So I can essentially catalog all of these images as they're coming in, make like a little essentially database. So these are all the fun. I was actually toying with making a TPS report, so just various examples of stuff. I also have Japanese. So the Japanese one is actually, let me just show you that. So I have my log. So this could be like the little log that I'm keeping track, and then I can click on one of these things here. And so this is an example of the Japanese version. So this is the backside of my business card that I created. And just to show you that it actually converted correctly, I can just drop that into Google Translate. It didn't quite get my last name correct, but close enough. So anyway, just fun stuff. So this is, like I said, kind of the art of what's possible. So if you do have like kind of a interest in dabbling in some of the more fun stuff with the cloud, the cloud APIs and such, you can definitely dive into that and utilize AppMaker for what it brings to the table. Simple UI construction, basically simple to set up the REST calls in that case. Cool. So I think that's pretty much it for what I wanted to show for this one. So we're going to finish up pretty soon and do some Q&A. So if you can go back to the slides. So just wanted to touch on what are some of the things that we're going to be working on, or that we're currently working on actually for this next year, next several quarters. We want to continue to help Cleo and people like her such that we make AppMaker more approachable, make it more, I would say, assistive, make it easier for people that may not have full computer science backgrounds, but basically have kind of an inkling for working with data or working with building out like an application. So in that sense, we want to provide more samples, tutorials, templates, as well as making the product just a lot more approachable, I think. So we're also looking at assistive app creation. So what that means is that maybe you're editing the spreadsheet. The spreadsheet itself could say, hey, this might actually be a good AppMaker app, so we can give you a little connector there to then generate out an application based off of the use case that it's starting to see, or a kind of like a common type of an app use case that looks like what the spreadsheet data is showing. So that's definitely something. We had some design sprints on that, and that's taking progress. Easier mobile responsive web app design. So there's a little bit that I showed you, like the little viewport editor or the viewport window that you can change the UI. There's definitely more to be done. Responsive web app development is not an easy subject, so we want to try to provide more guidance such that it will be easier. So if people are not so comfortable with the complexities of CSS and things like media queries, we want to continue to make that an easier experience for our knowledge workers and stuff. Or just kind of roll it in under the scene so they don't have to get into the ugly, messy stuff that it can sometimes be. The other thing is we want to continue doubling down on making AppMaker very friendly to legacy technology, so you can actually import from other older technologies, get the data uploaded, and be able to start generating applications fairly quickly, and as well as sheets. So right now, Cleo showed how she was able to connect to a sheet, grab its structure, and build a data model off of that. We want to continue to refine that process so it's a lot easier, and also make it a little bit more obvious such that once you connect to a sheet that you could import the data, or potentially even connect to that sheet and let that sheet serve as the final database destination. Although that's still a little bit controversial because it's not really a database, but it depends. Publishing the G Suite Marketplace, that's definitely another area that we're going to be working on this year to make it such that you can take your applications and publish them relatively easy within your domain and potentially share them in a larger marketplace out so other people can take advantage of it. This is definitely something that's been on the roadmap for a long time, but this year we want to definitely start taking some substantial progress, and we're already starting to get some initial details worked out on that. And then finally, just kind of widgetizing or rolling in some of the most popular APIs, especially with the cloud APIs, making it easier to reach out and connect to a lot of the other different elements of the cloud platform such that it's very easy to take that in and build that into your applications. So right now, it's very easy. Once you get set up with Cloud SQL, you don't have to worry about the setup. We want to do the same thing for other data sources, data services, BigQuery, and such. So there's a whole strategy that's now beginning to start being rolled out for that. So that's essentially a bit of a look ahead for the next few quarters and where we're taking AppMaker. So yeah, I would say if you're interested, you can just learn about it. There's that's essentially the top link is a marketing page, but you can dive into the tutorials. There's a code lab. There is one thing that I should say, AppMaker currently is gated via the SKUs. So you have to be a G Suite customer, and you have to have either business, enterprise, or an EDU customer for now. We're still discussing some alternate ways to get access to AppMaker. You can also join the forum and then participate and ask questions, and that our engineers, our overall team is listening in on that, and they'll chime in when available. So that's pretty much it. I think. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed and learned something, and you can always reach out to us. We have our info available online, so I hope you guys enjoyed it. So thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks. No.